I've never been a big fan of airplanes. The fact that they're basically floating in the air without any form of support and could lose power and plummet to the earth any second just didn't sit right with me. That being said, it was a tragedy when I had a conference to attend in another state and all the roads were blocked for some reason and I had to enter a flight. When I was boarding the plane, I had a foreboding feeling, but I ignored it, attempting to shake off my nerves. I had a window seat, which was terrifying because I'm deathly afraid of heights. I told myself I'd try to convince my seat partner to switch with me, but those thoughts evaporated when I saw who sat next to me. Of all the people on the planet to be traveling on this plane, on this day, at this hour, to this destination, it had to be my ex. We'd broken up, quite badly, when she'd cheated on me multiple times with multiple people, and she tried to set my house on fire, with me in it. I had a restraining order against her. She wasn't even supposed to be in the same state with me, so I was confused when I saw her, but I chose to ignore her. I looked anywhere but her, surveying the other passengers. There was a woman with 2 small children who were playing some kind of card game. Opposite her was a woman and a man in suits, going over some documents splayed across the tables in front of them. Just in front of them was a man arguing on the phone, one eye on the no electronics sign on the wall, basically screaming at the person he was talking to. Beside him was a girl, a little younger than me, reading a novel with earphones shoved in her ears, ignoring the entire world. As I looked from one person to another, I noticed something weird. They were all smiling. Even the man arguing on the phone was smiling, but he sounded angry. I chanced it and turned in my seat, my eyes going to my ex's face. She was smiling too. She looked at me, smiled wider, opening her arms as if to embrace me. I flinched, wondering what was wrong with her, when I realized something chilling. Just this morning, I had been packing my clothes, mumbling about how the plane would probably crash, and I wouldn't be found, and my parents would have to be going from morgue to morgue, searching for my body, but my body would most likely be at the bottom of an ocean, or devoured by wild animals, when my roommate walked into my room and showed me an Instagram picture of my ex getting tanned on a beach in Miami with the person she was currently dating. "Poor schmuck doesn't know what he's getting himself into," my roommate said, laughing hysterically and trying not to fall over. The picture was taken and posted this morning, and Miami was at least 8 hours from here. And Miami was at least 8 hours from where I was, so how exactly was my ex sitting beside me? I tried to control my breathing as I looked outside, at the runway we were supposed to take off from, and my breath caught in my throat. There was another plane right beside ours. Upon a closer look inside the plane, I saw the woman and her 2 children, the man arguing on the phone, the business people, the girl, basically everyone in my plane was on that plane, and they weren't smiling the way these people were. I started sweating inside my clothes as I tried to think of a way off this death trap, convinced I was in danger. I decided to risk it and I told my ex I needed to pee, and she stood up to let me pass, and I ran. When I got to the exit, I brandished my toothbrush as a weapon and told the flight attendant to let me off. He didn't blink once as he opened the door for me to climb down. I rushed to climb down and ran to the other plane. When I got there, the doors were open and I climbed up, looking in before I entered, and the seat I had on the other plane was vacant, so I asked the person sitting on the aisle seat to excuse me, apologizing profusely, and she did. When I sat down, I breathed a sigh of relief, happy to have escaped the nightmare I was almost in, and decided to go through my Instagram. As I opened my phone, I got a text from my roommate. "Apparently that picture I showed you this morning was kind of old, and Clara's in town right now. Actually, she's stopping over from Miami, going to where you are, so you'll probably see her at the airport. Good luck." As I read those words, my hands started shaking, and I stood up to see if I could catch a glimpse of the plane I just got off, and I saw it taxiing down the runway. I sat down and turned to face my seatmate. "Excuse me, where is this plane going to?" I asked, wringing my fingers together. My seatmate turned to look at me with the creepiest smile I've ever seen in my entire life, yellow brown teeth flashing in her mouth, and said, "Hell." Then the lights went off, and the laughing started. Julia lived alone, trying to make ends meet in her own way. She did shifts, jumping from work to work, trying to make enough money to pay her rent and feed herself. It was winter, and getting to work was even a half an hour's walk, coupled with the stress of working morning and night. Julia was addicted to music, and most of the time she plugged her earphones in her ears through the day at work. She felt music made life easier, and it was the language her soul understood. Whenever she said it, people would think it's because of her inability to socialize due to her tight schedule. Julia had no friends and had an inactive Facebook account. She spent the little time she had for herself sleeping and updating her playlist with more indie folk songs and Celtic pop world genre. She intensified the sadness she felt and walked lazily to work every morning and resuming at night, somewhere else. She wasn't satisfied with the type of life she lived, but she got used to living this type of life, and leaving it for nothing was not an option. She got sacked from a store where she worked the night shift because of her earphones. A burglar had gotten in by breaking the glass, and she wasn't aware till they called her the next morning. Footage showed that she was right there in the store. She had plugged her earphones in and wasn't aware someone had broken the window and had stolen something. For 2 nights after she got sacked, she had no job and didn't know what to use 8 hours to do. She tried sleeping but couldn't, and later found out she was suffering from insomnia. She was used to staying up till early in the morning, and then she'd have a quick 7 hours of sleep and resumed work. She decided to watch a horror movie a friend had recommended for her. It was easy staying awake to watch it. The storyline of the movie was about an old man who during his sleep would stab his grandchildren who came for the holidays with him, and the next morning he would find them dead and bury them, afraid of anyone finding out. When the parents who are his children came to get their children, he lied that they had gotten to get ice cream at the mall and poisoned their drink for the fear of being exposed. He buried them next to each other, and after a few weeks, he would wake up to the noise of an ice cream truck passing the front of his house around 2 a.m. The sequence occurred for 3 days, and he finally stayed up to see who was passing. It was a truck indeed. That night, the truck stopped in front of his house while he peeped at it from the window. The doors opened and closed. While he saw no one come in, petrified, he ran to his door to make sure he had locked it. He got there to meet the doors opened. Mad and sad, he ran out of the house and got ran over by an ice cream truck. She sighed at the movie and condemned the script writing, believing horror and spirits are just a thing of the mind and are impossible. The philosophy of possibilities and impossibilities had crowded her thoughts. She went back to her Celtic pop world music. She got a job the next day and was hyped at her new job in a hotel. All she had to do in her 6-hour night shift was to clean the empty rooms and expect her paycheck. It was as easy as this. The morning of the day she was to start her shift, she had updated her playlist and was hyped about her new job. She got new earphones at the store before getting to the hotel that night. It was a moonless night and the darkness was thick. She walked into the lobby, seeing other workers walk out. Julia paid no attention to them as they conversed. While walking out of the building, she met a janitor dragging his feet against the floor with his eyes red and his clothes saggy. "Are you the new girl?" he asked with a cackling voice. She took off her earpiece to reply to the man who raised a brow and tossed her a bunch of keys. "The rooms to clean are on the notice board. Don't clean room 404. It was mistakenly fixed into your duty," he said, and dragged his feet on the floor towards the entrance. "You're the only one who accepted the night shift job. See you tomorrow," he said, hoping she had heard. She hadn't, though. She was staring dumbly at the man, watching him point his hand to the board at the end of the long hall. The heading read Night Shift Roaster. Only her name was on it, but she still didn't remove her earpiece. It was good news for her. She got to work alone as she liked it, with nobody questioning or boring her with family issues. She started cleaning, and it was an hour to the end of the shift when she got to the last room on the list, room 404. She wasn't sure it was part of her duty, so she strolled to the lobby to check again. She stared at it for a while as the music kept grabbing her attention. She was right as she strolled back to the room. She tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Unlike the other open rooms, this one wasn't. She tried again, and the door opened, but the lights were out. She brought out her phone from her pocket. The volume of the music she was playing was increased to the highest as she turned on her flashlight, humming to the song. She searched for the switch and found it next to the bedside table. She climbed the bed to switch it on as the single chair next to her shifted. She hadn't seen it, and the door was still open. The lights were on, but it went off again and started flickering. Disgusted at the condition, she wanted to call it a quit and complain to her employers about what had happened. As she approached the door, it slammed shut, and she got phased as she threw off her earpiece plugged in her ears and looked around the room. The lights kept flickering. Opposite her, where a cream-color empty single chair was, she could see a figure sitting there. "Who's there?" She panicked as she tried to put on her flashlight, and the lights flickered in seconds. She shivered and tried to reach for the flower vase. Her hand grabbed it as she stepped back to the door to bang it. She kept banging, but there was no answer, and suddenly the lights were restored. She couldn't act like she hadn't seen anything, so she grabbed her phone to call the person who had briefed her about her role. It wasn't connecting. Although she wasn't seeing anything again, but the door wasn't opening still, she kept on banging at the door, hoping someone would hear her. Suddenly, she heard a howl behind her. She turned to see a woman with her hair dry, covering her face. A loud cry followed. She covered her ears and shouted too, and finally summoned the courage to grab the vase she was holding earlier and smashed it on the head that was facing her. The loud cry continued. As Julia's face was covered in blood, she felt a sharp pain. The hit had taken effect on her, not whatever she had just hit. The noise stopped, and the ghost in tattered white garments stuck the mop stick in her throat. Julia collapsed with the mop buried in her throat and blood flowing out of her eyes, nostrils, and mouth. The shift manager came the next morning to find Julia dead. "I thought I warned her," he said. A janitor had died there 4 years ago, and the next person that cleaned the room faced the same cruel fate which they successfully hid from the public. They have tried all ways to bar the door, but all resulted into another mayhem, so they left it. It was a restricted room that had somehow gotten on Julia's duty. She was buried with her earphones plugged. This journal is the property of Jason Steele. If found, please return with immediate effect. December 4th, 2004. We moved into our new house today, Beth and I. It's a beautiful Tudor house with breezy rooms. I bought this journal from the convenience store we stopped at to get groceries before we got here. Beth's calling me now to help unpack the boxes, so later. December 8th, 2004. We finished unpacking all our things and we're throwing a little homecoming party today and inviting all our neighbors. Beth is exhausted from cooking and making sure everything's perfect for today, and she's looking a little faint to be honest. I dropped my keys on the floor today, and when I bent to pick them up, they weren't there. I think there are rats in the house. December 25th, 2004. Merry Christmas! I haven't been writing in this because I'm unable to keep things going for long. I found the keys in the master bathroom. Not sure how it got there, but we've put rat traps all around the house just in case. May 20th, 2005. I lost the journal for a while, but I found it yesterday behind the spices in the kitchen cabinet. Beth is pregnant. We found out in February, and we're so excited to have our first child. July 7th, 2005. We're having twins! Wow! The doctor told us last week and I'm still in shock. I don't think I've ever been this happy and scared in my life. I hope I'm a good dad. August 20th, 2005. It's a boy and a girl. They were supposed to come in October, but Beth suddenly went into labor one night and I rushed her to the hospital. 3 hours later, our babies were born. I'm a father. October 8th, 2005. Our baby girl didn't make it. February 7th, 2006. Storm, our son, is 6 months old. He's the most beautiful thing I've ever set my eyes on. Someone keeps pressing our doorbell at odd hours of the night. Our house is close to a high school, so it's pretty obvious that it's the kids that are pranking us. April 17th, 2006. Beth got mad and bought a doorbell camera. The pranks were becoming too frequent and we barely sleep anymore. I linked the camera to my phone so I can always see who's at the door. April 20th, 2006. I'm scared. The doorbell started ringing at 11 p.m. yesterday, and I turned on my phone to finally see the hoodlums plaguing our sleep, and I froze staring at the live feed but not understanding what I was seeing. There was nobody there. The doorbell kept ringing, and I kept looking at the phone, trying to understand what's going on. I decided there had to be a reasonable explanation, and I would go to an electrician to try to explain what's going on. May 7th, 2006. We're looking into buying another house. September 15th, 2006. I finally saw the person ringing the doorbell. It's our daughter. She has blonde hair and beautiful blue eyes, identical to Storm's. When we walked in the door that day, I moved the camera lower because I thought maybe the reason we couldn't see the person was because the person was short. Turns out I was right. It didn't occur to me to ask myself how exactly she was ringing the doorbell, and what she was doing there when she was supposed to be dead. I jumped out of bed and opened the door for her, and I scooped her up into my arms, and I yelled for Beth to come fast. She ran into the foyer, asking me what was wrong, and I started babbling about our daughter coming back, and I showed her to Beth. Beth looked at me and looked at our daughter, confusion written all over her face, and she smiled an obviously false smile, and said she had a headache and I should put the baby to sleep. I wondered why she wasn't as excited as me to see our daughter, but I passed it off as shock. November 19th, 2006. Beth submitted me into a mental hospital. The day after our daughter came back, I set myself on a mission to make a room for her. I went to the guest room and bared it, painting the walls pink and purple, and I bought and assembled the cutest princess bed ever. Beth walked in and asked what I was doing while I was arranging the stuffed animals on the bed, and I told her I was getting the room ready for our daughter. She looked at me for about 10 seconds without blinking, then she burst into tears. She ran out of the room and the house and came back 3 hours later when I was feeding the twins with some men in suits. One of the men came close to me and put an arm on mine. I felt a sharp pain in my hand and everything went black. When I woke up, it was morning and I was strapped to a bed in a blue room, surrounded by padded walls. A doctor entered the room after 5 minutes and told me I'd had a mental break. Apparently, Beth hadn't been seeing our daughter all this while, and she was convinced I was crazy because I hadn't been sleeping enough. In that moment, I hated Beth with every fiber of my being for trying to take my children away from me. I stayed in the hospital for a month, refusing to talk to Beth when she came to see me, and obeying the doctor's rules accordingly so I could leave. At the end of the month, the doctor said he saw no evidence of psychosis in me, and he let me go. When I got home after ignoring Beth the whole ride, the babysitter was with Storm. I was convinced Beth was playing a practical joke gone too far on me, but just in case I didn't ask about my daughter. I held Storm in my arms, kissing him everywhere I could. I tried to sleep that night, but I had nightmares, so I took my sleeping pills. December 15th, 2006. I know what I have to do now. My daughter gave me the idea in a drawing she made, depicting all of us holding on to each other with Beth's arms around her. All I have to do is put us all in danger, and that will trigger Beth's maternal instincts, and she'll have no choice but to accept the fact that our daughter is here, and will be fine after that. Wish me luck. The detective closed the black journal, shaking his head at the contents within. He looked up at the scene before him again. 2 adults holding onto a smaller child, all burned to a crisp. As he walked away from the place, he noticed something he hadn't before. It looked like the child had been holding on to another child about his size as he died. But there was nobody there.
True scary horror stories and animated horror shorts. Be sure to like and subscribe. Submit your own story on Reddit at Chilled Bones Writes. And thanks for watching our scary stories.